everybody. I'm an addict named Kathy. I can't see. Oh, this is wonderful. I'm an addict named Kathy. I want to thank God and the Southern California Regional Convention for inviting me here tonight. And I want to take a moment to start off by saying that if while I'm sharing, if any moment that I'm sharing, if you feel what I feel, if my words touch your spirit and my spirit touches your spirit, would you please take that moment to thank the God of your understanding for blessing you with recovery and freeing us all from hell. I need to bring me some more. I want to share with you what's happened to me, not just how it was, what happened and how it is, but who I was, what happened to me, and who I am today as a result of Narcotics Anonymous exclusively. The first step, and it works how and why, talks about how many of us came to our first meeting and many members refer to it as coming home. And that's what I felt like. I spent my whole life running from within myself because the pain was too great, trying to get out of me. I couldn't live in my own skin. And somehow or another, through the steps and traditions of Narcotics Anonymous, I am able to live within myself and find some peace and some comfort in here. I want to share with you, can everybody hear me? You know, because I feel like I'm screaming and I can still hear you louder than I can hear me. We can't both talk at the same time. So either you gotta listen or I'll listen. Thank you. When I came in here, I didn't know how to live inside myself. Just for today, talked about I'll follow a path of self-acceptance. And how I'll do that is I'll show up, I'll tell the truth, and I'll work the steps. And that's what the process has been for me. I've shown up, I've told the truth, and I work the steps. And as a result, I'm at home with myself. But it wasn't always like that. When I first came in here, I didn't know how to be within myself. I always searched outside myself. And I want to share with you about the steps and how the steps set me free. How in the first step I'm going to ask you to go inside. Because recovery, heard a speaker say today recovery is an inside job.
Reading real loud out in the audience. Reading real loud out in the audience.
Okay.
I'm just going to push the mic away from you a little bit, okay?
I love you too. I want to talk to you about the first step and about being inside myself, about being way down deep in the basement of my soul, about being in some... Look, I used to hear a guy say that he hit bottom, that we talk about this disease and about hitting bottom, and I don't know about anybody else, but I hit bottom in 1976. I didn't get clean till 1988. I hit bottom in 76, and this disease gave me a shovel and said, dig deeper. And I dug. And I dug, and I dug. I thought I was digging my way out. I really, truly did. I didn't know I was dealing with symptoms. I didn't know I had a disease. I knew nothing. I'm talking about living in the basement in my own house, being locked down there in the dark, lonely, isolated, desperate, hopeless, lost. I was introduced to Narcotics Anonymous in 1986 from a nudge from a judge. I used to call it judicial intervention. And I came here in 86, but I was misinformed. I was misdirected when I got here. Having a clear Narcotics Anonymous message is essential to every addict's life. I was misinformed. I was told by the system that the reason why I was having so much trouble was because I never had a job and I used illegal drugs. And look, I was so desperate I was willing to try anything. And that seems pretty easy. Get a job and just don't do any illegal drugs and you can, use socially. And I was willing to try it, so when I came out in here in 1986, I had a very difficult time. I'm talking about getting in touch with the first step. I had a very difficult time listening to what you were telling me. I looked for the differences, not the similarities, because I had the cure. I thought it was okay if I could just I never worked a job in my life, never wanted one, had a job. I lived to use and used to live 24/7. There was no job that could pay me the money I needed to use the way I used. That was my job. And see, for addicts like me, it's real easy to misinterpret social acceptability for recovery. So when I came in here, I got a job, and I wasn't using illegal drugs, and I came in here and heard you say, alcohol's a drug. And I said, no, it isn't. Alcohol's a refreshment. You said, don't get into a relationship for the first year. I've just been in the penitentiary for 4 with all women. I used to argue with you. You'd say, watch that 13th step. I'd say, there is no 13th step. You're making shit up now. I'd go to the text on you and I'd look it up and it would say in the text, I don't even know what edition this was. We were going through this earlier yesterday, what edition it was, but it used to say that don't make any major decisions in the first year. And as far as I was concerned, a relationship was not a major decision. I mean, if you liked me and I liked you and we were good to go, then let's go. Well, ain't nothing major about that. Nothing major was happening in my life. That was, it. If you ain't praying, you ain't staying. You could forget that one. That one's, I'm out of here on that one. Because I had no understanding of God and I wanted no understanding of God. I really just wanted to, not get arrested. I didn't even want to stop using. I just didn't want to get arrested anymore. I was tired of going to jail. And so whenever you told me that I couldn't get with the first step, the first step says reservations will rob us of the benefits this program has to offer, and that's what happened to me. I could not get with it. And here, I knew nothing about progression. I knew nothing about this being incurable or fatal. I knew nothing of those things. And as a result, I picked up, of course, first the refreshment. I was having a really bad day, things were going really wrong, and I needed refreshed. And it started off with a drink, and the drink led to taking perks because I had a backache, and I know it works for a backache. You take perks for a backache. I don't need a doctor to tell me because I could diagnose myself. I don't need a pharmacist to give it to me and tell me how to I take it as needed. And who knows better how much I need than me? It's my pain. And then before I know it, I'm eating 60 perks a day. And this disease, I swear this disease took a correspondence course in economics somewhere. Because immediately it'll come to me with that. Do you know it would be cheaper to get a bag of dope than it would be to buy 60 perks a day? It would hold you all day. You could still work like your job. Why don't you just get a bag of dope? Sounds good to me. So I get the bag of dope, and the next thing I know, this disease says, Cass. It calls me Cass. Cass. It uses my voice. It uses my own voice. It says, Cass, do you know you could take your pay, you go buy a bundle, you sell so many from the bundle, you could have your own dope for free, you could get high for nothing, you'd still have your job, and you'd really have it going on. Sounds good to me. Then it says to me the ultimate sucker line. Listen to this one. Cass, do you know you lose money when you go to work? Do you know you work 40 hours a week for this little bit of money? You can make that kind of money in 10 or 15 minutes. You're abusing yourself. Stop working the job. And I quit the job with a resentment, major resentment. I thought they took advantage of an ex-con. And before I knew it, the ramrod was coming through the door, and I was going to jail because this disease forgot to tell me that I have like 15 felony convictions for not knowing how to sell drugs. And I couldn't even get in the county jail because I had so many abscesses all over me that I was so infested with infection that they wouldn't even touch me and they wouldn't even search me. And I wound up in the hospital. And in the hospital bed, I was watching the 11 o'clock news, and there was a ramrod going through a door that looked vaguely familiar. And there was people coming out of the house that looked somewhat familiar. And then all of a sudden I came out and I looked vividly familiar. And you know what it was? I sat in that hospital bed, and for the first time I saw me straight up the way I was, not the way this disease would have me see me. You know, like you know how you could look in the mirror and you'd be a mess, and this disease would say you've lost weight and you look really good. But I saw me straight up, and I saw that I was dying, and I remember feeling that, you know how we say we were spiritually bankrupt when we got in here? And I felt that peace inside of me, and I believe it was all that was left of my spirit. There was just a small part of my spirit that wasn't dead yet, that within me I felt the fear, and I felt the pain, and I started to cry in that hospital bed. And I remember saying, God, I swear this is the basic prayer that all addicts say. Like, we don't have a clue on how to talk to God, but we all seem to have the same basic prayer. And I said it, God, please help me. I don't want to die like this. I'm talking about really having a spiritual awakening to the degree that, for an addict, this is a spiritual awakening to be able to say, I've had enough. I've had enough. I can't do this anymore. I can't take this anymore. I've had enough. And finally coming to terms with, look, living in the basement, look, God, look what's become of me. Look, my best thinking has almost killed me. God, look, I don't even wonder anymore who I am. I wonder what I am. I don't know what's happened to me, but I can't take this anymore. God, please help me. Please help me. And then comes the second step in the basement. I'm talking about just getting a flicker of light, just a spark of hope, just a little bit of direction, and finally getting introduced to Narcotics Anonymous. Coming to Narcotics Anonymous meetings, being totally confused. I spent more than my share of time being diagnosed, evaluated, analyzed, almost dissected. I've had psychological testing and psychiatric treatment, and every time I turned around, the same shit would happen. I'd go into this office thinking just maybe I can get some answers here why I keep doing this stuff. I really don't understand it. I wasn't raised this way. This isn't what I was taught. Something's just got me. I've lost my mind. I used to think I was crazy. I used to be crazy. There's something certifiably wrong here. And I'd go in there and I'd start talking to these people, and I'd tell them what I was doing and what was happening to me and how I couldn't stop. How I thought to myself, if if I ever used heroin, I would stop. Because if it ever, I used to think pharmaceuticals was controlled using. That if I would use heroin, I would stop. No, if I ever shot dope in my neck, I'll stop. If I ever had to give up my daughter, I'd stop. No, if I ever went to the penitentiary, I'll stop. No, if I ever turn a trick, I'll stop. And I crossed every never line, and I could not stop. No matter what, I could not stop. And I'm talking about being so desperate, looking for an answer, for somebody to please help me and tell me why I can't stop. And going into these places and talking to these people and explaining the pain and the unmanageability, and them saying shit like, well, who do you think you are? What did you think you were doing? Why would you let that happen to yourself? How could you possibly live like that? And I came to Narcotics Anonymous, and I'm talking about living in the dark and getting a flicker of hope. And it wasn't that you said to me, who did you think you are? You said, who is an addict? You didn't say to me, what was your problem? What did you think you were doing? You said, what is the Narcotics Anonymous program? You didn't say, why would you let yourself get so bad? You said, why are we here? You didn't say, how could you live like that? You said, this is how it works. I'm talking about finally getting answers to questions that had baffled me all my life. Yeah. The second step talks about how, as we begin to believe that there's hope for us, we also begin to trust the process of recovery. I'm talking about I used to come into meetings and I would be so totally confused. I couldn't understand anything you guys were saying. You'd be talking about self-acceptance and self-centeredness and self-obsession, and there was so many selves, and I could just, how do you separate them? You could identify feelings, and it was like, damn. I was like in awe. I was totally in awe. Couldn't understand your language. You understood mine, but I couldn't understand yours. And you'd laugh and shake your head a lot, and I thought, what is going on here? But I wanted what you had. And I remember coming in here, and I couldn't understand anything, but I could understand one thing. Why are we here? I used to listen to the readings and hold on to the readings. They were like big hugs. And I would listen to Why Are We Here, and I heard a part that says, we have a disease for which there is known cure. It can, however, be arrested. I knew arrested very well. I understood arrested thoroughly. And I identified, you could have said remissed, you could have said, you said arrested. And I literally took upon myself, I use analogies a lot, and I'm very descriptive. Some people get it, Tammy, others don't. And if you don't, I'll explain it later, but I use analogies a lot, and I used to, like, literally, I got up, I said to this disease, you're arrested. I always wanted to do that. They did that to me all the time. I wanted to do it. And I said, I charge this disease with theft by deception. I hated that charge. I got a bunch of them. I could never understand that charge because somebody would always be trying to buy something off me illegally. I would burn them, and then I would wind up with a case. I said, I really thought I was like teaching them morality. I couldn't understand why I was catching a case on it. And what I did was I charged this disease with theft by deception because it was exactly what I had done. I realized that this disease tried to sell me like relief from pain, and I bought it to find out that it was really just the source of my pain, and that it robbed me of years and years and years and years of my life. And so I sentenced it just for today. And I keep it in a little cell in my mind, and honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness are the keys that keep the door locked. And I remember coming in, and I started to get with some of this stuff. I started feeling hope. I used to come in, and Jerry was talking to me yesterday or the day before about, I used to come in and I would stand up in meetings and I would say, you guys say just for today, just for today, well, just for today is cool, but what do you do at night? What about just for tonight? Because the nights are so long, I would feel like I couldn't sleep, and I would feel like the clock would just tick, 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 tick. I'd close my eyes and I'd feel like I could see through my lids, and I'd think, I'm not going to call somebody at 3 o'clock in the morning. I just didn't have enough to call anybody that, so I made this poem up. I said to myself, I made this poem up, and I used to say this poem over and over again, night after night after night, and it was called Just for Tonight. And I'd say, just for tonight, you'll be all right. In the quiet dark of the evening, my thoughts will not deceive me. I have faith in God above. I believe He's full of love. I have a ship to weather the storm. With help from all, I will transform. So hold on tight and don't lose sight. And just for tonight, I'll be all right. And I used to say it over and over and over again, and I finally started to fall asleep. And I was like, this shit works! I was like, there was finally answers to the questions. I was finally living in the solution. I was starting to really, truly trust the process. Then comes the third step, and now that there's some light shining down in the basement, I'm talking about making a decision to build a relationship with God. I'm talking about finally developing some sort of understanding of God. That came through you. I truly believe that God introduced me to Narcotics Anonymous, and Narcotics Anonymous introduced me to God. Because I had no understanding of a loving and caring God before I came here. I'm talking about being in the basement and starting to take some steps up out of the elevator's broke. Use the steps. Take the steps. And I started taking the steps. I started getting some God ain't going to give me more than I can handle. Take a step. God didn't bring me this far to let me down. Take a step. God doesn't close one door without opening another. Take a step. Be still and know that I am God. Take a step. If God's for me, who could really be against me? Take a step. God is good all the time. Take a step. And I started taking steps up out of the basement. And getting to the top of the steps, there's a door. Open up the door. It says in the third step, it says, all that's required of this step is willingness. Take the steps. All that's required is willingness. All that is essential is that we open the door to a power greater than ourselves. So I'm talking about opening up the door. See, this is all a process. All of this is a process. Here's an example of it. Sometimes the process is slow. Sometimes it's with the quickness. Here's an experience I had with, like, say, the first 3 steps. I was married. I had just given birth to twins that were 2 pounds, 13 ounces each. This is in my 2nd year clean. My kids are in intensive care. I'm real sick. I threw a blood clot in my lung. I'm real sick. They're real sick. They don't think my son's going to make it. He's on a ventilator. I used to go into the intensive care, and I used to touch him, and he couldn't even keep down any formula or anything. My mother used to say, Kathy, don't get too attached to him. He's not going to make it. She was scared that if he didn't make it, I wouldn't stay clean. Now, at the same time, their father started using. He couldn't handle it. He started using. And as I started getting better and the kids came home and my son was all right, he's getting progressively worse. But see, I bought into a dream. I bought into the dream that I was going to be with this man. He was going to be with me. We were going to be clean. We were going to have a family. I was going to love him. He was going to love me. And we were like, look, we were going to be like happily ever after. It was going to be okay. And he started to use, and I didn't want that to be real. So instead of like staying in touch with reality, I slipped into fantasy. And what happened was when the evidence would present itself that he was using, I would deny it. I'd come home, I just bought a pair of shoes, and then the pair of shoes would be gone. And I would think I must have misplaced them. There'd be checks missing from the checkbook, and I must have voided it. Because I didn't want to admit it. My sponsor says to me, Kathy, why do you keep denying that he's using? Kathy, just admit it. Admit it. I said, I think he's using. Think. I couldn't even say he's used. Couldn't even say it. First step. Stop living in fantasy. Stop, Kat. Stop trying to get out of reality. Stay in touch with reality. Admit it. He's using. Second step comes. Here's what happens. I was pushing 200 pounds then. I was living to eat and eating to live. And I had a bowl of ice cream in my hand, and I went over to the drawer to get a spoon for the ice cream. And I came. We're on the second step. I came and I arrived at the drawer. Okay? I pulled the drawer open and I came to. There were no spoons in my house. None. Not even the big ones. And I came to believe real quick. I came to believe that normal people have spoons in their house. And not only that, but that these spoons didn't all disappear in one day. It was a process in and of itself, too. And when I came to believe, I can identify the insanity. Because it's insanity for me to be living with someone that's using. It's insanity for me to be sleeping with someone that's using. It was insanity for me to live with someone that was trying to kill themselves, and I was trying desperately to live. And once I came to believe and I identified the insanity, I had to make the decision. I had to move to 3 and make the decision. And look, the decision was not to let go of the man. The decision was not to let go of the marriage. The decision was to let go of the dream. The dream, because this disease is so treacherous that it knows that I'm struggling, and it says, oh, I got her. She's on the dream again. Let's go back and get every dream she ever had that got broken. Let's just fly all of them at her so she can get in so much pain that she'll want to die. Let's just send it all to her. And I remember saying, I can't be in this much pain over this one thing. It can't be this painful, this one thing. I'm talking about holding on so tight that my nails are going into my palm. Holding on so tight and saying, God, please, you've got to take this. It's too painful. Holding on that I'm drawing blood, that my nails are going into my palm so tight that I'm drawing blood, saying, God, please help me. Please take the pain. I can't take it. And God's saying, Kath, let it go. And I open up my hand to let it go, and I find out I was holding on to nothing the whole time. Nothing. And I used to sneak down the basement steps, no lie. I would be in so much pain I couldn't sleep. He's out of it, blasted, snoring, wanted to kill. I was homicidal. 2 years clean, I was homicidal. I used to sneak down the basement steps, and I used to sit on the steps, and I would cry, and I would rock myself on the steps, and I would cry, and I'd say, God, please, I don't know how to do all this. I don't know how to work. I don't know what I'm going to do with these 2 babies. I'm not that young anymore, and I can't do it, God. Please, God, you got to help me, please. And I'd sit there and I'd rock and I'd cry and I'd rock and I'd cry. And it finally dawned on me. I had been on my 4th step for 16 months. I refused to do my 4th step because I said I was in entirely too much pain, and I couldn't handle any more pain. And I was absolutely sure that the fourth step was going to make me be in more pain than I was already in. I didn't know that the steps are not there to induce pain, they're there to relieve pain. And I was sitting on the steps and I'm rocking, and it finally dawns on me that the answer that I'm asking God for was there the whole time. I was sitting on the steps. So I'm talking about coming through the door. What's essential is willingness. What's required is that we open the door to a power greater than ourselves. And I'm in the house, it's dark in here. There's no lights on in this house. We're up out of the basement, but I'm searching. What am I looking for? It's scary in the dark. All I got to work with is a pen light. Why? Because it's through the pen that we see the light. Go through the house. I'm searching. What am I looking? I'm looking for me. I seem to have lost myself. I don't know how that happened, but slowly but surely, every moral, every value, every dream, every goal I ever had in life, I lost them. I'm going back through the house to look for pieces of me that I lost. I'm searching. What do I find? I find a little girl in there. When I was a little girl, I used to hide in the closet under the blankets because I used to think that nobody really cared if I was home. And I'm an only child from a broken home that was spoiled rotten. So I used to always get stuck with labels a lot. And what I believed an only child was a very lonely child. And being spoiled meant that something was rotten. It just meant that something was rotten. And I believed that really neither one of them cared too much about me. And I used to hide under the blankets in the closet, and I used to say to myself, I'm going to hide here till somebody looks for me. And when nobody would look for me, I would sit there and cry, and I would say, nobody really cares if I'm even here. Nobody even doesn't even know if I exist. None of it's really important. I'm talking about feeling the loneliness. And I was making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich for my son. That's his favorite. And my son said to me, Mama, when you was little, did Pap make you sandwiches? And I said, no, because Pap didn't live with me. I lived with Grandma, and Grandma wasn't home very much because she worked. And my son looked up at me, 6 years old, and he said to me, Mama, I'll bet you were very lonely. And I thought to myself, how does he know? How did he know? He knew how I felt. And I said to him, yeah, I was lonely. I said, but it's like you, because their father's in the penitentiary now. He couldn't stop. And he's in the penitentiary, and he's been there for almost 4 years. And I said to him, yeah, babe, it's like your dad. He's in the penitentiary. And he said, no, because my dad's in jail, but he'll be home. Pap was home. Oh! It's like there goes that resentment again. And I'm talking about feeling the feelings that goes with being a little girl and how it felt to be a little girl. And putting that down. And searching through the house and finding the teenager in the house. I was very angry as a teenager. I got very resentful as a teenager. All the loneliness and fear turned into anger and resentment and confusion. And by the time I was a teenager, at 16, I got married. 17, I had my daughter. I was sure that she didn't know anything about like my mother, and I was going to go get married, and I was going to live life right, and I didn't have to be bothered with her anymore, and I married an addict. Trying to live happily ever after. I'm talking about broken dream after broken dream after broken dream, till the pain got so great that by the time I was woman, I no longer could dream anymore. I no longer had any hope. That I lost it. I remember being in downtown Pittsburg, tricking. Call it what it is, tricking. And I was sitting in a bar. The bar was called the Purgatory Lounge. It's not there anymore. That's not an endorsement. And I was sitting in the Purgatory Lounge, and I was talking to this guy next to me about how this is what I had become. About how every day he goes out with a woman, he takes her to dinner and a show, buys her flowers, gives her gifts, and he pays all this money for that, and sometimes he doesn't even get sex. And that I had a very sound business proposition, that we didn't have to go through all that stuff, and he could save some of his money by just giving me whatever up front, and we could take care of things just straight up the way they were. And this guy started to talk to me about companionship and spending time with an... I mean, it was foreign to me. What are you talking about? Talk to you. What do you... I mean, it was... My conversation was like, who's got it, what's to it, where's he at? There was no... And I had reached a point where I had no respect for anybody who wanted to spend time with me and talk with me and have me as a companion, because I was doing everything I possibly could to get away from me myself. Why would you want to be around me? That's what I had reached a point of. I'm talking about finding the woman in the bathroom, trying desperately to get it in her, blood everywhere, dying, hopeless, lost, wanting to die. Please, God, look, I reached a point where I didn't even believe God had mercy anymore. God, if you have any mercy, would you let me die? Because I can't take the pain of living anymore. Let me die. And here comes the fifth step, and with the fifth step, all the lights come on. What looks so scary in the dark looks so small in the light. These defects die in the light of exposure. And I remember I used to tell my sponsor, I don't understand this. I don't understand why I have to write this stuff down and tell God, myself, and others. I don't understand why I got to do all that stuff. I've been telling people along the way. My secrets are out. And she said to me, Kath, the time has come for you to share, all of you, with one other human being. And it dawned on me, I would never give everybody all of it. I would test you to see what you might be willing to accept. And if I thought that territory was uncharted, I wouldn't give you that part. I wasn't going to tell you all of it. And I finally did the fifth step. And I'm talking about really, truly knowing that I'm in the process, that I'm taking the step. I'm no longer living in the dark. I finally got some light in here. And as a result, here comes 6 and 6. Now that the lights are on, this house is a mess. Look, as a result of me trying to escape from pain, I left my doors wide open for any kind of trash to get put in there. I was so empty inside that I let anything fill up inside, and it's all garbage, and it's got to go. There's stuff in there like pride, envy, sloth, gluttony, grief. What is she I'm talking about stuff that defects the character. Stuff that interferes with me being the best person I can be. Well, pride's in the corner backed up against the wall like this. Because pride's going to look good. And you see, before I came to Narcotics Anonymous, I used to have a problem with this disease. This disease was like the coach. And the defects of character are the players. Now see, what's important is to know is that, have you ever been gang-banged by defects? It's a terrible thing. Because they play together as a team. Like if one comes up on me and it can't, and I identify it, like I've gotten very good at identifying lust, right? So if lust comes, up and presents itself, and I say like, no, right? Then pride will say, look, she's on to you, let me try. And it'll back up and let another one in. They're very good at that. They don't care who gets in, just so somebody gets in. And pride will be up against the wall with its arms crossed and its head up in the air looking good, and you gave me tools to work with, and you just gave me these little cliches because when this stuff starts to happen, you need something real fast. Because obsession and compulsion comes real quick. And you need something real fast to cut them off. Recovery is a defense plan, not an offense plan. Okay? We don't have to fight anymore. We'll just defend ourselves. So here comes pride trying to look good, and you told me, tell pride you can't save your face and your ass at the same time. You told me there's like greed's over in the corner protecting its stash. Everything's mine, 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 right? And you told me tell greed you can only keep what you have by giving it away. See, gluttony runs through the house. It wants more. More, it doesn't care what more of, it just wants more. So it says more. And you told me tell gluttony that one is too many and 1,000's never enough. Anger runs up and down the steps, stomps up and slams doors. If you hear a door slam in there, it's the anger. And anger, you told me to tell anger, if you always do what you always did, you always get what you always got. Sloth lays on the floor. It lays on the floor and tells you, tomorrow I'm going to do all this good stuff. It's always going to do it tomorrow. Just put it off for as long as you can. You told me tell sloth, chase your recovery like you chase the drugs. Everything. Envy's always out the back door. Envy, here's what envy does. It looks out the back door, it looks in your window, it looks in your window, and then it runs to the phone and it says, girl, do you know who I just saw doing such and such with so-and-so? That's what it does. It spends all its time checking everybody else's house out and then talking to everybody else about what's going on everywhere else, so that nobody will look in their window. And you told me to tell envy, if you want what we have, then do what we did. Of character, there was something that you told me to help me defend myself. And then we start putting the garbage in the bag. Because the garbage got to go. Because either we put the garbage in the bag, or the garbage will put us in the bag. Here comes 7, and now what happens is 7 is sometimes God removes the garbage. I put the garbage in the bag, God removes the garbage. That's all I got to do is have willingness. 6 steps says just have the willingness. Put the garbage in the bag. God removes it. And then God goes and removes it, and I say, 7 steps. God, could you hold up? I think I threw something away I really need. And I literally start to sift through garbage, looking for, maybe I could clean this one up a little bit. Maybe if I dust it off and shine it up, I can make it work. Like, for instance, lust. Well, lust is a good one. I'll talk about lust, right? Hey, lust has brought me to my knees more ways than one, huh? Oh, yeah. Woo! And what I'm really talking about is I'm talking about the experience of humility and being reduced to the animal level clean. Because these defects have reduced me to the animal level clean. Like, for instance, lust. See, whenever I indulge in lust, I feel like a cat. Woo! And what I do is I turn into this cat, and I go around and I rub up against people and I purr. Looking for affection and attention. And what I really am is an animal on the prowl looking for a victim or a hostage. I know you ladies are with me, right? We don't want to leave the men out there, do we? Maybe you guys could get with the dog in the house. Yeah. You know the dog that wags his tail and pants. He's just looking for a companion. And what he really is just an animal trying to bury a bone. Talking about really, truly feeling the humility that comes with the seventh step. Feeling the feeling of like being reduced to the animal level in the seventh step and saying, look, God, please, I don't want to be like this anymore. God, please, I'm tired of being so shallow. I'm tired of having no substance. I'm tired of falling for anything. I'm tired of settling for less. God, please help me to be someone with some character. Please, God, help me. And putting the garbage back in the bag. Putting it back in the bag because it just doesn't work anymore. And as a result of the seventh step, the house gets cleaned up. There's some order in it. It's a place that's kind of decent to live in now. It's not filled with pollution and garbage. But what I'm starting to realize with this eighth step is that I'm in a house that no light shines. I keep the curtains drawn. I keep the doors shut. I screen my phone calls. Nobody can get in. I won't let anybody in. And I start to realize that this can still be a very lonely place to be if I don't start letting some people in. And it's actually, here, look at this. I would open up the door and reach in the mailbox and shut the door real quick. And I would go through my mail and I would look at the return address before I would open the envelope up. Like if it was like Internal Revenue Service, don't want to open that one. Like Department of Public Assistance, don't want to open that. I almost threw my driver's license away at the beginning of the year. Department of Transportation, don't want to open that one. Because I didn't want to deal with the damage that had been done. I didn't want to, look, my oldest daughter went through active addiction with me. I have a daughter that's 23. Went through active addiction with me. This poor child went through hell and had no drugs. Had no drugs to ease the pain at any time. And she was taught many things. And as a result of that, this child used to go out with me. I had a girlfriend that used to take my daughter boosting. Shoplifting, retail theft, in case you haven't reached that point yet. And look, my daughter would go with this friend of mine, and the friend used to boost, and the tags would be hanging out, and my daughter would pull the girl's jacket and say, Lou, the tags are hanging out. You gotta hide the tags. This is like what I remember riding down the street, and my daughter could read at the time, and there was a sign across the street at my neighbor's house that said, I'm a booster for, it was some organization for children. And my daughter said, oh, Mom, ain't you one of them too? I'm talking about, this disease, it affects every area of our lives. It affects our children, our families, all of them. And my daughter was affected by this disease. And look, whenever I got clean, I couldn't even look in this little girl's eyes. When I would look in her eyes, I would just get consumed by the pain. The pain was so great. And I asked someone to bring Just for Today up because I was reading. Yeah, I actually read the literature. Yeah, I read the literature. I know, huh? And I was reading in Just for Today, and I want to read to you what I felt because this was right exactly what I was feeling. And it talks about the eighth step offers a big chance from a life dominated by guilt and remorse, and we get a chance to change it. It says, remorse was one of the feelings that kept us using. We had stumbled our way through active addiction, leaving a trail of heartbreak and devastation too painful to consider. Our remorse was often intensified by our perception that we couldn't do anything about the damage we had caused. There was no way to make it right. That's how I felt. How can I make it right for this little girl? How can I make it right for robbing her for all mother, the one that was supposed to care for her looking to me for safety, and me being the one that inflicted the most pain. How can I make that right? How can I give her back all her childhood and her teenage years? It says remorse is no longer an instrument we use to torture ourselves. Remorse can become a tool that we can use to achieve self-forgiveness. And I remember my daughter being 16 years old. I'm pregnant with twins, and my daughter comes up pregnant too. And I remember telling my daughter that I couldn't handle any more babies in the house. I had the twins, just came home from the hospital, and I couldn't handle any more babies in the house, and that she would have to go. That she was going to have to go and stay with the baby's father and their family because I just couldn't do it. I couldn't handle it. You know what I couldn't handle? I couldn't handle trying to be a grandmother when I couldn't even get with being a mother. I couldn't handle feeling the fear that went with me being 16 years old, having her at 17 years old, and knowing what happened to me, and seeing the same thing happening to her. And I couldn't deal with it, and I told her she had to go. And she had the baby, and she was staying with him, and she called me up the one day crying. She said, "Mom, I can't stay here. It's not working. I can't do this. Please let me come home." And I told her she could come home, but she couldn't bring the baby with her. That she had to let him take care of the baby because I couldn't handle any more children in the house. And she came home. And she came home, and she was there for 2 or 3 weeks, and he used to call up every day, and he would say to her, "What kind of a mother are you that you would leave your child? What kind of a mother are you that this baby doesn't have you here to take care of it?" And she used to cry and cry all night long. "Mom, I want my baby. I don't know what to do. Mom, I can't handle this. He tells me every day I'm not a good mother. Mom, I don't know what I should do, but I can't live there." And I remember praying, and I sat down with her, and I said to her, "Marcy, look, I am so scared because I know what happened to me, and I don't want it to happen to you." And she said to me, "Mom, I know what happened to you, and I'll work real hard not to let it happen to me." And I said, "Okay, babe, go get the baby. Let's bring him home." For a year, I used to call my grandson that baby because I couldn't call him by his name, because to call him by his name made him real. So I would call him that baby, that baby, that baby. It took a year for me to finally call him Justin. About 3 or 4 years later, Justin and Marcy and Trey came back home with me because they split up. Their marriage had split up. And they came back home to live with me. And while we were back home, Justin used to come upstairs and lay in bed with me. This is the baby I couldn't handle. This was the baby that was that baby, and it was just too much for me, and I couldn't handle it. And he'd come upstairs and he'd lay in bed with me and watch TV with me. And he would say to me, "Meemaw." He calls me Meemaw. He'd say, "Meemaw, my last house was really yucky. And it seems like I moved to lots of different places. But no matter where I go, I always seem to end up right back here." And I said, "Yeah, Justin, because this will always be your home." And he smiled back at me and he said, "Yeah, Meemaw, this will always be my home." And I'm trying to tell you that as a result of the 8th and the 9th step and doing whatever I had to do to make things right and not torturing myself anymore with the guilt and shame, that I learned how to forgive myself, and I found some comfort within myself. And with that comfort, I'm actually able to comfort others. And that Justin calls me Meemaw. It's cool. It's cool. And here comes the 10th step, and now I just want to keep the house in order. I just want to maintain the house. Here, this is I got to tell you this story because I haven't told it for a long time. This is about the 10th step. Do the laundry, do the dishes, vacuum. As it gets started, clean up. Don't let it build up. Clean it up as it comes. I'm in the car with my kids. The kids are in the back seat. They were about 3 then. I get a birthday cake for my kids. Now, I have to run into the drugstore to pick up a prescription for my daughter, and I don't want to get the kids up and get them so I say to the kids, I leave them in the car, right? And I say to the kids, now look, this is the birthday cake. Do you see the birthday cake? I show them the birthday cake. They shake their head. Yeah, birthday cake, yeah. Nobody touched the birthday cake. Do you understand me? Yes, don't touch the birthday cake. I go into the store. I come back out of the store. Didn't take me but a minute. Somebody touched the birthday cake. I said to my daughter, who touched the cake? She said, Robbie touched the cake. So I look at my son and I say to my son, why'd you touch the fucking cake? And he puts his little head down like this and he looks up from his eyes, and I could see that he felt shame and guilt. And he looks up and I start the car and I'm pulling out of the parking lot and he says to me, Mama, you said that bad word. And I look at my son and I say to my son, and you touched the cake. Because, look, the 10th step says take personal inventory, not someone else's personal inventory, right? I skipped over that part. It says that if you do the first part, you don't have to do the second, but I didn't do the first part. So I'm driving up the hill and I start to feel guilty because I know I tried to blame him for me cursing. And as I'm feeling this knot in my gut, I turn and I say to my son, Robbie, Mama's wrong. See, because the 10th step says admit we're wrong. It doesn't say we're sorry. I had a friend of mine who used to say, sorry means, oops, I'll probably do it again. Say I'm wrong. Hey, and if you don't think there's a difference, try it. It's much harder to say I'm wrong. I say, Robbie, Mama's wrong. I shouldn't have swore, and I'll try real hard not to say bad words anymore. And he looked up at me and he smiled and he said, Mama, I'll try not to touch the cake. And it's really how the 10th step works. If I just take care of me, everything else will kind of take care of itself. I just have to take care of me. And I start to learn with the 10th step that if I really check myself before this stuff happens, I can actually prevent some of this stuff from happening. If I just start to ask myself some questions, 10th step says ask yourself, are you too hungry, angry, lonely, tired? Are you setting yourself up for trouble? Ask yourself that once in a while. It's a spiritual awakening. Like I start asking myself things like, are you eating something or is something eating you? Or are you buying something or is something buying you? Are you betting on something or is something betting on you? Are you smoking something or is something smoking you? Are you screwing someone or is someone really screwing you? And once I start to ask myself these questions, I find that I can keep things pretty clean and in order. And then here comes the 11th step. And as a result of these steps, I feel the presence of God within me. That I used to always look outside me for direction. I used to look for signs, and I used to look for answers, and I used to try everywhere to find the direction of where God wants me to go. And now within me, I feel direction. I don't have to look outside myself. That I found within me some direction of which way to go now. Look, oh man, sometimes I miss the message. I got to be straight up. I miss the message sometimes. Look, so earlier this summer I meet this guy. He's supposed to be an everyday guy. Everyday guy's like one of them people that aren't like us. We're just for today people. Okay? Well, this everyday guy, after going out with him a couple months, it becomes very apparent that he's a just for today guy. Now, initially, I started seeing this guy, and I thought, I've been doing service work, and I've been working really hard, and I'm practicing principles, and I really was like, I was on target. And I thought, oh, God, how nice that you send me some romance, and, oh, you're so sweet, and we met in traffic. It was God's will. And as the months go on and it gets exposed that he's a just for today guy, I got to help him get in detox, and it's humbling. Oops, I missed a message. I thought it was romance. It was a 12-step call. And while he's in this detox, they don't have any TV or radio or anything anymore. Managed care seemed to eliminate some things, and he's like up there saying, "Cat, look, it's so quiet up here, and my thoughts, they just keep racing, and I'm going to lose my mind up here. Please, could you send me something?" And so I would send him up some literature and the basic text and stuff like that. And the one day I said, I'm going to stop and get him a card. And I'm really having a hard time because I'm being a service. I got 3 sponsees. One's in a program, one's in a detox. Another one, their family's calling me. His family's calling me. I said, God, look, I really want to be a service. I want to serve my purpose. I really try hard to follow your direction and be about the right thing. But God, could you throw me a bone? Huh? So I go into the store to get this guy a card, and when I get this card, it says, listen in silence and you will hear. And the card is all about how it's necessary for it to be quiet for us to hear God speak. It's 11-step stuff. And at the end of the card, it says, because only in silence can God and man come face to face. And I started to realize that this was probably his opportunity to get in touch with his God. And that right there in the aisle of that shopping center, it was my opportunity to get in touch with my God. And this little old man comes running up to me out of nowhere, like he wasn't there when I got the card. He comes scurrying up, little tiny thing, right? Bald head, comes up to me and he says, here, take this. And I take it, and it's this one of them little books. It looks biblical, but I'm not religious, but I'll work with you. And I look down at the book, and it says, peace with God. Now, I can get with peace with God. I can work that. And I look up, and I say, thank you. And he says to me, I'll see you in heaven. I was like, oh, shit. And I smiled, and I said, thanks. And I looked down at the book, and the back of it, and it says, acquaint yourself with God, and there you'll find peace and goodness. And I look up, and the guy was gone. He was gone. If I'm lying, I'm dying. He was gone. And at that moment, I knew that it really was about that. The 11th step talks about how after we do this step, we learn to feel empathy and compassion, that we're able to touch that kind of stuff that we couldn't touch before. And that as a result of that, we start to feel purpose in our lives. That the joy truly is in the journey. That really the freedom and everything that we were looking for is all based on us helping one another. That it's truly what God's will was for me the whole time. And here comes the 12th step, and now that the light shines in the house and the doors and the windows are, I invite you in. It's open house. 12th step, open house. I'm here to share my experience, strength, and hope with you, to hope that anything that I've been through, that if you're going through it, or you've been through it, or you might go through it, that I can offer you some hope that you can get through it and you don't have to use. That if you put God in this hand, that if you put God in this hand and the program in this hand, that your hands are full and you can't pick up. I give my kids a shower, and then as they get out, I dry them, and I stand behind them, and in front of them is this long-length mirror, full-length mirror. And my little girl, she's so chubby too. My little girl would stand there and I'd dry her off and she's all blonde and pink and rosy and stuff. And she looks in the mirror and she smiles at me and I smile back at her. And she says to me, Mom, I like that little girl in the mirror. I says, how come? And she says, because when I smile at her, she smiles back at me. I said, yeah, I know. And she says to me the one day, Mama, and she's smiling. I said, what, Rhea? She said, it sure feels good to be clean. You know what? And I thought to myself, that little girl doesn't even know. And you know what? This is to the newcomer. It sure feels good to be clean. Pittsburgh, through sponsorship and that, I've learned, we do steps and traditions together. We do one with one and two with two, that we truly do believe as long as the ties that bind us together are stronger than those that will tear us apart, that all will truly be well. That I was taught early in recovery that the steps will help me not to commit suicide and the traditions will help me not to commit homicide. And I'm trying to tell you, at 2 years clean, I was homicidal, and I used to think that the steps, it says some of us are sicker than others. I used to think that the steps were for those that were, were just like normal addicts, and the really sick ones had to work the traditions. And then when I got like 2 years clean, I realized that I was some of the sicker ones, and that I better get with these traditions, or there's a good possibility that I can wind up institutionalized without the use of a drug. And I started looking at the traditions, and I'm just going to go through them briefly because they truly have helped me live with another human being. And I don't want to sell them short, and I don't want to, because they're so essential to me living with another human being. The first tradition says, look for the similarities, not the differences, that you're never alone, never again. Second tradition says, learn to listen and listen to learn. Third tradition says, those who judge don't matter, and those that matter don't judge. Fourth tradition talks about autonomy and how, that we need autonomy, which is really about self-discipline, that I need to have self-discipline, but I can't let go for my own goals and my own dreams and step on other people trying to do it. And I used to think, too, that, people would say, well, what do you think about this or that? And I used to think that I would be honest and I could tell you brutally what I felt about you or what I thought about you. And I didn't know that was lack of self-discipline. And the fourth tradition taught me that honesty without compassion is hostility. Fifth tradition said, carry the message, not the mess. Sixth tradition says, keep the focus. You're easily diverted. Keep the focus no matter what. Seventh tradition says, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. Eighth tradition talks about special workers. And I swear, I believe the eighth tradition says, if we don't get humble, we'll crumble. And you know what? My kids think they're special workers. My kids do little things around the house, and they'll say, Mama, am I your special worker? And I'll say, yeah. They do things that I could do, and I could probably even do it better, but I really don't have the time to do everything that needs to be done, so I let them help me. And I don't do it afterwards better than them, but I've learned through the humility. In the eighth tradition talks about efficiency, that we do better if we get it done that way than trying to do it all ourselves. If we don't get humble, we'll crumble. The ninth tradition says, we live to serve and we serve to live. And look, I just need to tell you this because I'm totally overwhelmed. I spent 4 years in the penitentiary, never had a job in my life, and talk about... It took me about 2 years to realize that I went from boosting to switching price tags. I thought if I paid for half of it, I was doing good. To buying something, keeping the receipt, and returning it after I wore it. and still not buying hot stuff, to finally get with the concept of you got to buy it yourself and not return it and keep it. And once I started, I'm saying that some of these processes are very long. And I want to tell you that I stand before you and I am the secretary at my kids' PTO. Because look where it started. It started because I was the secretary of my home group. It started because they needed a GSR and I went to area service. And then as a result, I stayed involved in area service and eventually the vice chair and the chair, and I learned about agendas and minutes and business meetings. And I went to this PTO meeting and I had the minutes typed up and the agenda typed up, and you know what they said to me? You're too organized for us. Unbelievable. The 10th tradition talks about not getting an opinion. Don't give your opinion, it causes controversy. No shit. So the 10th tradition says that we're here by God's grace and mercy and we ain't with no controversy. The 11th tradition says walk the walk. We don't care like who your sponsor is, and we don't care what clique you're in. I don't care what your home group is. I want to know how you living. How you living? And the 12th tradition talks about anonymity, and really, truly, the essence of it all is don't take the credit. The credit is not ours. This is a God-given program with God-sent people. This is all about God. And people tease me a lot because I'm strictly about Narcotics Anonymous. I don't get involved in any other fellowship. I felt no need to get involved in any other fellowship. Anything I've ever needed, I find right here through the fellowship of Narcotics Anonymous. And I want to close with this by saying, here was a song that I had heard that reminded me very much of what Narcotics Anonymous did for me. And it said, you were better to me than I was to myself. For me, there's you and there ain't nobody else. I want to stop and thank you, N.A. How sweet it is to be loved by you. Thanks for letting me share.